اہتمام 3 روزہ انٹرنیشنل کانفرنس کا لاہور کے مقامی ہوٹل میں انعقاد کیا گیا۔ AAOU 2019 کے پہلے دن اوپننگ سیشن کے چیف گیسٹ فیڈرل منسٹر فار IT اینڈ ٹیلی کمیونیکیشن ڈاکٹر خالد مقبول صدیقی تھے، جن کے ہمراہ فیڈرل سیکرٹری IT اینڈ ٹیلی کمیونیکیشن مسٹر شعیب احمد صدیقی تھے۔ AAOU 2019 کے کانفرنس چیئر پروفیسر ڈاکٹر مسرور الہی بابر نے کانفرنس کے شرکاء کو خوش آمدید کہتے ہوئے کہا،
Virtual University of Pakistan being the leader in ICT-based education in Asia and around the world has been honored to hold this 33rd Asian Association of Open Universities Conference 2019.
کانفرنس کے کو-چیئر ڈاکٹر ناصر نوید نے اپنے خطاب میں کہا،
We are grateful to the Executive Committee and General Body members of the Asian Association of Open Universities for showing confidence in Pakistan, trusting the capabilities of virtual university and providing opportunity to host this 33rd conference of the series.
Rector Virtual University Mr. Naeem Tariq نے اپنے خطاب میں کہا،
Today is a great honor for me to represent the Virtual University of Pakistan for hosting the 33rd AAOU Annual Conference.
AAOU 2019 میں دنیا کے مختلف ممالک سے آئے ہوئے مندوبین نے شرکت کی، جن میں سری لنکا، تھائی لینڈ، انڈونیشیا، جنوبی کوریا، کینیڈا، فلپائن، چین، موریتانیہ، یونان، ویتنام، برما، ملیشیا، جاپان، ایران، مالدیو، ترکی اور جنوبی افریقہ شامل تھے۔ پلینری سیشنز میں کی نوٹ اسپیکرز نے اپنے مقالہ جات پڑھتے ہوئے کہا،
or the FIRE or IR 4.0 to some, to reflect the digital configuration of this phenomenon.
In this presentation, I will first review the evolution of ODL and the different institutional models that have emerged over the years.
Those students who are studying online or virtually or blended kind of thing should be given opportunities to travel.
This is the time when I think we have to reflect and rethink about what we have been doing for decades and what are the meaning of open to us.
The learning objects which we actually align to give to the learners is dependent on the fact what are the learner's abilities in terms of his or her learning priorities, his or her background, his or her personal profiles.
ٹیکنیکل سیشنز میں جہاں مختلف ممالک سے آئے ہوئے اسکالرز نے اپنے مقالے پڑھے، وہیں پاکستان کے اسکالرز نے بھی اپنے مقالے پڑھے۔ چیف گیسٹ فیڈرل منسٹر فار IT اینڈ ٹیلی کمیونیکیشن ڈاکٹر خالد مقبول صدیقی نے تعلیم کی اہمیت پر بات کرتے ہوئے کہا،
I would like to congratulate Virtual University of Pakistan for hosting the AAOU. The conference may establish cooperation among the researchers of Open University in Asia and around the world.
پاکستان کے سافٹ امیج کو بہتر بنانے کے لیے کانفرنس کے دوسرے روز شام کو گالا ڈنر کا اہتمام کیا گیا، جس میں پاکستانی موسیقی سے حاضرین خوب لطف اندوز ہوئے۔ مختلف ممالک کے مندوبین نے اپنے اپنے ملکوں کے نغمے اور ترانے پیش کیے۔ تقریب کے تیسرے اور آخری روز عزت مآب صدر اسلامی جمہوریہ پاکستان جناب ڈاکٹر عارف الوی نے مہمان خصوصی کے طور پر شرکت کی۔ انہوں نے تعلیم کو سب لوگوں کے لیے عام کرنے پر زور دیتے ہوئے کہا،
It is my pleasure to be here at the 33rd Annual Conference of the Asian Association of Open Universities, hosted by the Virtual University in Pakistan. We must first request some universities in the world to remove copyright on knowledge. Knowledge never had a copyright.
Very good morning to the presidents of the AAOU, Professor Ojat Darojat, and also the distinguished speakers, Professor Dr. Zia UI-Qayyum, Dr. K.C.Li, and also the moderator, Professor Gorky Sembiring. Just now we watched the previous AAOU conference in Lahore Virtual University. The aim of playing the video is to arise our memory that we are missing togetherness during the conference. Hopefully this year, next year, we will meet face to face in Sri Lanka. First of all, I would like to welcome to all of you to the second AAOU President Speech Series, Responding COVID-19 to Remove Barriers, Access, Equity, and Inclusion. As time is running, I would like to invite the presidents of the AAOU, Professor Ojat Darojat, to deliver the opening remark.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Rahmat. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, everyone, and also to the distinguished speakers. First, our colleague, Professor Dr. Zia UI-Qayyum, the Vice Chancellor of Allama Iqbal Open University in Pakistan. Thank you so much for your time. You're sharing with us about your experience, knowledge, how to manage Allama Iqbal Open University, such a huge student body. And I know that Allama Iqbal Open University also has been regarded as the oldest distant higher education in Asia and regional Asia regions. And secondly, to Dr. K.C.Li, my friends, senior researchers at the Open University of Hong Kong. Very humble people, provide help to others, and also I just remember him about always sharing special gift, total in our group when we are meeting in OU5 or in other sessions. And also my friend, Prof. Dr. Gorky Sembiring, the head of Center for Research in Universitas Terbuka, Indonesia. And of course, to all beloved participants coming from 20 countries. This is amazing, including from Hong Kong, from Pakistan, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Cyprus, and also from India, Malaysia, Myanmar, Nigeria, Philippines, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Japan, Taiwan, Thailand, Vietnam, and from other different parts of the world. So there are many people, participants from around the world. So I welcome you all to the second AAOU President Speech Series webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, the AAOU is committed, and this is our commitment to promote and support the development of distance learning, especially in Asia regions. One of the initiative is through sharing experience and knowledge as well as best practice among us in order to make distance education improve and find the most ideal distance education practices in our institutions. So in this session, I would like to thank Prof. Dr. Zia UI-Qayyum for joining the second AAOU Presidential Speech. As we know that Allama Iqbal Open University is one of the mega university in the world with 1.3 million students. This is very huge students. So we are sure that we will learn a lot from you. And also to Dr. K.C.Li, I know your commitment to promote distance educations is beyond questions. Especially your involvement and dedication to AAOU initiative and programs are highly appreciated. And Professor Dr. Gorky Sembiring, my friend, through your experiences as a public speaker, you are a public speaker, moderator in countless conferences and events, Alhamdulillah, as well as obtaining achievement as Best Paper Awardee in different conference and also in previous AAOU conference. So I believe your great talents will lighten up our event today. So at last, to all participants, I thank you for taking your time to join our event. Please pay attention to all the regulation which will be delivered by the chair, Prof. Gorky Sembiring. And finally, I hope this program will not only be enlightening, but also giving us new ideas and knowledge for our better future. So enjoy the webinar and have a great day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, President. And now, dear participants, I would like to inform you that you may raise the question not only on the live chat, but also through the YouTube. Now, I would like to invite the chair of this second AAOU President Speeches, Professor Gorky Sembiring. Time is yours, Pak Gorky.
Thank you very much, Pak Rahmat. Distinguished colleagues, expert practitioners of open and distance learning around the globe. It was stated just now by our Rector, the President of AAOU as well, that many countries, not only from Asia region, but also from another part of the globe. Today, we'll be having about 70 to 80 minutes discussing about two topics as a sub-theme of the responding COVID-19 to remove barriers, access, equity, and inclusion. The first topic later on would be presented by Dr. K.C.Li about tutoring and mentoring during the COVID-19 outbreak. And the second will be delivered by Professor Zia UI-Qayyum, Vice Chancellor of Allama Iqbal Open University, Pakistan, on evaluation and assessment during the COVID-19 outbreak. It is very interesting to know these two sub-themes for some reasons. But at least, as I know K.C.Li, he will be talking about tutoring and mentoring. I declare now, I'm one of his students as well. Before the COVID, of course, before the COVID. Why? If you see later on the CV of K.C.Li, he got 3 BSc and 4 master degree and also Ph.D. And apart from that, he is also a researcher, lecturer, marketer, and also tutor. And the last one, for me at least, he is a truly real motivator, how to be a good writer and how to be a good presenter. Now, we'll be hearing later on how K.C.Li, as one of scholar from Open University, Hong Kong, about tutoring and mentoring. Why tutoring and mentoring is important in ODL context? Because almost all of the students are independent learners. So there will be a specific touch or orientation how to touch the student with independent learners characteristic through not face-to-face, not we call it lecturing or even teaching, but tutoring and mentoring. And as far as I know, during the COVID-19, less, less attention how the ODL practitioners, experts, and also institution to deliver distance education through tutoring and mentoring. So the more advantages would be get by the students. Now, the first speakers today, oh, I almost forgot. I know K.C. for a long time, what, 10 years ago, and my first meeting with him, it was in Allama Iqbal Open University, 2013. Is that right, K.C.? And then start from there. We always have very tremendous meetings, and I attend 3 out of 7 AAOU in Hong Kong, and also in every event organized by AAOU, because K.C. is also a former Secretary General of AAOU, and the last but not least, he is a fantastic singer. Apart from this time. So with our big applause, we'll be presented about tutoring and mentoring during COVID-19 outbreak by K.C.Li for 20 minutes. Take your time, and I believe that we will be very happy to have your presentation, because you have a new niche, mentoring, tutoring, that less pay attention by most of the scholars. K.C., your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Gorky, for your introduction. May I know if you can see my first slide?
I'm not
sharing my first slide.
Not yet.
Not yet, K.C.
Not yet. So I try again.
Yes, okay now.
Yes.
So you can see my first slide now. Am I right?
Not yet. This is your video.
Okay. Does it work now?
We are waiting. Not yet.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay now. Oh,
it's okay. Oh,
but now it's the video again.
So we have to wait for 3 seconds, because usually there is a delay.
So
can you share again the PowerPoint, Dr. K.C.? Yeah, and then we wait for 3 seconds.
Does it work now?
Yeah. It works.
Just leave it like that. Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your introduction. I'm also very grateful for the AAOU President, Professor Ojat, Darojat, for inviting me. It's really an honor to have been invited. I also really very much appreciate organizing this speech series. And this particular one is on responding to COVID-19. It is a very important topic. COVID-19 is upending the higher education sector. Things are changing abruptly. There is a paradigm shift taking place. And COVID-19 is very much a game changer. A lot of things, especially to us, tutoring, mentoring are changing. Now, let's firstly take a look at the broader picture. Now, we are open universities. We have been practicing distance education. Conventional institutions have been focusing on classroom learning. But because of COVID-19, learners are not allowed to go into campus, and we are practicing social distancing. Everyone is practicing online learning. We are very much like conventional institutions, or better say, conventional institutions are doing what we are doing. For conventional learning, institutions have been focusing on interaction process, and that is also the assessment process. That is also very important. This will be further explained by another by a more important person than me. If you look closely at what institutions are providing, they very much focus on what they provide for students learning, basically very much on face-to-face. And for other kinds of material, it varies from institution to institution, but in general, it's students to gain access. So because of COVID-19, students can't go to lectures. They very much need to rely on lecture tutorials, the online part. And institutions are starting also to prepare learning materials. How about us? Now we have been doing this. All these are provided by normally in the institution. We have been doing this for quite some time. Because of COVID-19, we now depend very much on the online part. We are affected to different extent. Some of us have been very much digitized. Some of us have gone paperless, but some of us are still very much relying on printed material, face-to-face classes. For those institutions, we are more affected. I have taken a quick review of all our AAOU member institutions, all 61 of them, looking at their website, checking what information they have put online about COVID-19 regarding tutoring, mentoring. I can read English if the English version is available, but if English and my language, Chinese, is not available, then I have to skip. But it seems that that is not really very much information. I've got 16 institutions information. Mostly I like this. And you can see that we are all switching to online form, e-learning mode. These are examples. Online learning. So face-to-face mode. So these are things that we have been doing online. It appears that there hasn't been very much information on the website. We are not going to blame anyone, and we shouldn't blame anyone. The obvious reason for not having very much information is simple. Every course is different. We can't really assume that a particular pedagogical approach, pedagogical method is good for all classes. In fact, even for the same course, if you are handling different groups of students, for different student groups, somewhat the pedagogical strategies will need to be different. So teaching and learning is highly context sensitive. We need to pay attention to the microenvironment as educators. And in fact, for individual institutions, we are in different stages of pedagogical and technological development. Some are resource rich, some have gone very far in terms of digitization. Some are picking up. So we are in different levels of online usage, online readiness, as well as our students. Some students are tech savvy. They have very good internet connections, some are not. So we can see that we are in very different contexts. And even in the same institution, students could be highly diverse. They are in very different contexts and even in the same course. But can there be some general rules, some tips? Now, time does not allow me to go through a lot of details, but firstly, and more importantly, there are already ample resources available for you, for everyone. For example, Commonwealth of Learning. If you go into col.org, you'll find a lot of useful information, tips about how to digitize our courses, how to work on these kind of online learning effectively. Another good example, UNESCO. Just go into unesco.org and don't forget, after the slash, put in COVID-19 as well. You'll find a lot of useful resources. So a lot of useful tips, resources available. But when we design our course, we probably need to keep bearing in mind that when we teach and also when students learn, when we teach, it's not just that we present information to the learners. When students learn, they have to put in something new onto the complex existing knowledge system of theirs. So when they learn, it's very much cognitive activities. They need to, besides our presenting the information to learners, they must also integrate the knowledge into their existing knowledge. So whether we could effectively do this is the key. The kind of tasks we are giving to our students decides whether our tutoring mentoring is effective. But it is only one of the key factors to pay attention to. There's also the psychological factors, whether the students are mentally, psychologically ready to learn, mentally, effectively, and that's also the social factor to pay attention to. And whether the students are making enough mental efforts, psychological efforts to learn the particular items that you are presenting to them. And when we talk about online learning is quite different from classroom learning. For example, in the sense that in a classroom within 4 walls, students sit together, you give an hour's lecture, quite fine in quite a lot of situations. But in an online situation, if you talk to the students, keep on talking for 1 hour on the screen, with a lot of distraction outside the screen, it could be a big problem. There's also an issue about the limitations. Learners have limits to their memory, how much they can learn, how much they can take, how much they can memorize, retain in their memory system. All this must be taken into consideration. Say, for example, if you are using videos to teach, how long should your video be? It could be, it's not just putting the classroom teaching onto the video. If we just do so, we do not quite understand online learning. So we must ask ourselves hard questions. When we do tutoring and mentoring, are we providing suitable information, the right platform? Are we organizing the right activities? Are we really helping our learners to develop their competence? More than this, we must also ask ourselves whether our learners in that particular situation, in their learning time, whether we have well prepared them to take up the knowledge, to build up their knowledge psychologically, whether they are willing to do so, whether we are also helping our learners to retain the knowledge, whether we are also developing their competence to be ready to use the knowledge. So these are hard questions we must face ourselves. But also keeping in mind that every learner is different. So every teaching situation is different. The first time you teach this and the second time you repeat this to the same learner could be quite different. And for different learners, it could be different. We must be very sensitive. And of course, we know that there are a lot of technology helping us, if we're talking about online learning, helping us to do this as well. Say, for example, adopting analytics to we take data from the learners to help us tailor our teaching to the learner's specific needs. The more and more we are talking about technology, as whenever we talk about online learning, the more sophisticated we are talking about, the more we rely on technology. And this brings the question of the availability of the technology. It's not only the institution's availability, it's also the learner's availability. The kind of devices they have, the kind of internet they can access. So this brings the questions about digital divide. And that's the key point about something that we educators must cherish. We must do well in keeping for fairness. We must do our best to break digital divide for equity and inclusion. This is something that we must keep in mind. To do this well, let us look at the issue from a broader perspective. As a result of COVID-19, no matter what kind of institutions we are in, what stages of digitization we are in, we are moving towards online learning. And online learning somehow has suddenly become the thing. But when we talk about online learning, we must keep in mind there are various things going together with it. We have been emphasizing that it's not just putting what has been happening in the classroom to online to the online mode, then it will be okay. It's not. Online learning emphasizes quite a lot of important factors. Students being self-directed, the teaching should be self-centered, it's ubiquitous, it must be flexible. At the same time, there is some good news about online learning. In terms of readiness, if we look at the institution, the learners, and also the community's psychological readiness, their knowledge, their ability to manipulate, to use the online tools cognitively, and also resource-wise, whether the devices are made available. Because of COVID-19, all have gone up in terms of readiness. The whole world, all institutions, all educational institutions have become far more ready towards online learning. When we think about whether we are doing well, let's also think about what other institutions are doing. So it's very good for us to have seminars, webinars like this. We not only look at what we are doing, we look at what other institutions are doing. And I suggest that we don't just look at what open universities are doing. We could also look at what conventional institutions are doing. I just quote you some example. I just take some examples from New York. My colleagues have done some studies on what universities in New York have been doing. You probably remember that New York is one of the cities in the world that has been hard hit by COVID-19. So you see that this is information summarized from their website. They've been doing various kinds of things, putting things online. Now, other than providing online teaching, online classes, online activities available, they are also providing license such as what you see at the bottom, Adobe licenses, cloud-based license, available for students at no additional cost. Extend their license. And some institutions are also extending the service of provision of e-books to students as well during the COVID-19 period. So it is difficult for them to get printed books physically, then e-books, full negotiation with publishers are provided to them. If you look at the last item here, we see that they are also making their courses more flexible, which in a way is quite similar to what many distance learning institutions are doing. Students have a choice to choose whether to take a lighter load because of COVID-19, rather than keeping the same study load every semester. So more flexibility for students, more options for students, provision of synchronous as well as asynchronous content. So a lot of, now we can see that other institutions are already providing quite a lot of useful information online. So I've just mentioned that open universities may not be providing a lot of this kind of information online. But we can also see that some institutions are providing a lot of this. So this might have some implication on us. While we are saying that online course must have the same quality as face-to-face teaching course. Yes, we must agree. But when we talk about online quality, we must also know what we are talking about. It's not just we're teaching the same kind of things. It's also about the effectiveness of the tutoring and mentoring that we are offering to our students. How flexible we are, to what extent we can customize our curriculum to the particular group of learners by using the technology available. And to what extent we are tailoring ourselves, our curriculum, to learning autonomy. In view of COVID-19, we have been thinking that the situation is like this. COVID-19 is temporary. Before COVID-19, in the higher education world is mainly the green part face-to-face teaching. After the COVID-19, it will return to what is so-called normal. Quite a lot of people expect this. But will it be true? It could, in reality, be like this. And in fact, we know that COVID-19, if we are extremely lucky, is really contemporary. But it's quite likely that it will come back again and again in waves. And after COVID-19, or after the first half year or this year, 2020, the situation can still go on. And anyway, conventional institutions are much more ready to deliver online courses. And we ourselves, open universities, need to be much more ready to keep on delivering courses. And learners, we can see that, expect that. Our learners, after they have tasted a lot of advantages of having courses online, they are expecting more from open universities for putting the courses online, making them more flexible, more accessible, having the courses more tailored to their needs. So with this in mind, we see that, as I said at the beginning, COVID-19 has brought about unprecedented challenges. It's disruptive. It's upending our system. It's also bringing about a paradigm shift. It's game-changing. So we in order to sustain and to excel, we must be innovative and pioneer suitable ways forward. We must be change ready so that we can master our future. We can see that distance learning institutions target student group. Could be rather different after the COVID-19 because conventional institutions are could be eating up our market. And in different countries, the situation could be quite different. Just before this webinar, Professor Ojat Darojat has told me that other institutions in Indonesia is asking UT for information about how to do well in doing online courses. It is very good. But at the same time, we also see that in some other
We still have about 45 seconds to go. Please kindly mute the microphone. Thank you.
Learning institutions, market may be eaten up. So we must find our ways to do well so that in view of the future challenges, the market shifts, we can still be doing very well as high
from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. in the evening, with offering different kinds of courses to these students, and the average enrollment or the average size of average number of students who are attending these sessions every day ranges between 30,000 to 40,000 every day. So this is the scale of activities when I talk about tutoring, mentoring, and carry out the academic activities every day. So almost 30, 40,000 students are connected with AAOU every day, and these academic activities go on. The big challenge, obviously, is the assessments. As Professor Lee said, he showed the graph where we have this pre-COVID scenario, having a scattered graph where you see a few dots of online, islands of online education. And then there is the midway portion where now all of the universities, almost all of the universities around the world are offering their courses and trying to complete their academic activities in an online mode. And it is expected that once this pandemic is over, we would have an enormous increase in the potential and offering of the courses in an online mode. And I was talking to a biotechnologist rather, a few days ago. He mentioned that let's not talk about post-COVID scenario, planning the post-COVID scenario. Let's now plan or pre-plan a next pandemic, which they think is going to occur in next 5 to 6 years. God forbid, you do not know what kind of pandemic we are going to confront with, but now taking this challenge as an opportunity, the universities need to evolve the strategies and develop their own ecosystems where they can provide the learning material, learning facilities to the learners in an online mode, but more importantly, yes, whether that online education is having the same rigor, vigor, and quality as you conventionally find in the conventional universities. And that's a big question mark. And this question mark basically is raised due to the fact that we do not have very well described, defined assessment methods when it comes to online education. We, around the globe, can use different kinds of vehicles for actually carrying the learning material towards the learners. People are using Microsoft Teams, people are using Zoom, people are using other facilities as well, Google Classroom, and like us, purposefully designed learning management systems. But what about the assessments? To the best of my knowledge, I do not think that there are very well-defined frameworks available, which can then be used effectively to gauge the performance and extent of learning of the learner in an online mode. If we are required to carry out and conduct the assessments like Allama Iqbal Open University used to do at 900 examination centers across the country, then what's really the purpose of having this online education? We are conducting lectures in an online mode, and we are constrained, again, to conduct the assessments and examinations because we don't have these frameworks available to carry out these kind of assessments to mark the grades and graduate the students. But big question is, whatever activity we actually undertake for assessing the students, that environment should have been safe. The validity of that framework, validity of that software, validity of that environment could be ascertained. The reliability could be ascertained. There should be a general acceptability amongst the peers and amongst the students as well for that environment. What we did at Allama Iqbal Open University, we spent quite some time, honestly, almost 3 months, to actually reach out the students, what we intend to do for assessments, whether it's sessionals, the continuous assessments during the semester activities. And to carry out such an activity, obviously, we had to engage the tutors as well. We had to engage our own faculty members as well. So we conducted lots of workshops, training sessions to actually get the feedback from them, their expectations, addressing to their apprehensions and fears. when it comes to students or faculty members both, and then providing them a training how to use LMS and other means of assessment to complete the semester assessment or examination activities. And as the slide contains material, I mean, we try to actually create a good balance of formative and summative assessments. We will normally take 30% of the formative assessment and 70% of the summative assessments and evaluations. And these evaluations are basically carried out using different kinds of modes and modalities. We use asynchronous modes where we use assignments. This time we prepared special assignments actually with the help of faculty members, which would relate to certain learning outcomes and learning objectives which the teacher might have set while actually setting the course contents of a particular course or a subject. These assignments were then sent to the students through a learning management system. They attempted those assignments and sent back to their respective tutors. They marked those assignments and their feedback was then provided to the students concerned. Similarly, especially in computer science or other education related subjects where the students are required to go to, for example, the teaching practices exercises in the educational programs, or computer science students when they take labs in their computer labs to complete their course requirements. Assessment portfolios were also used for the same activity. In a synchronous mode, as I said, I mean, we have a purposefully designed learning management system. We used LMS to conduct online quizzes, with multiple choice questions. I mean, replacing the final examination requirement, we used an end-term assessment, which was an open book based examination. Again, for example, for a course, we actually tried to build an end-term assessment rubric which would cover almost all important learning objectives which were set for that course. It was specifically designed, vetted by the experts, and then counter-vetted and counter-checked by the chairperson of the departments. And then these were printed in a huge number to send to the places where there is poor connectivity or where there is no connectivity at all in the remote areas of Pakistan. And wherever we could find, we have relatively better connectivity, these ETAs were sent through the LMS. And we then actually had specific sessions created for specific number of students so that they can access this end-term assessment material during a specific slot. And then they were required to really attempt that end-term assessment question paper with an open book access within a stipulated time period. And for that purpose, in few of the cases, even safe exam browsers were used, which were actually mainly used for MPhil and PhD programs. But in some cases, we, in conjunction with the LMS, we use these SEBs to actually control those sessions where a final term assessment was being made in an open book mode. Similarly, in few of the cases, and that's actually true in other universities as well, people did conduct, kind of viva voce examinations online by connecting the students in a vlog mode, or for example, in a chat forum, for example, and then asking questions and rating them or marking for their extent of learning. Another thing which currently we are working on, it's not really readily available, but it is basically the VR and AR based virtual reality, augmented reality based content, which could really provide better learning environment, especially for the courses which require lab component. For example, courses in medical domain, courses in, for example, Faculty of Sciences, chemistry, biology, environmental sciences, etc., etc. Computer science is not an exception even. And then using that environment for assessing the students as well. For that purpose, actually, we are in the process of developing these VR, AR based content. We are in consultation with few universities in UK, including University of Leicester, Open University of UK, and hopefully we'll be able to really have this content and correspondingly an assessment environment, which is based on VR and AR based approaches. So, I mean, in that I could say only that, I mean, one size does not fit all. So we have to evolve anyway a strategy, especially when you are dealing with such a large number of students, one. And secondly, when you are actually having this, I mean, even in today's world and even in developed countries, you do have the digital divide as well. So yes, ideally, we should be providing solutions based on technological interventions. But there are areas, and there would be areas where there is no connectivity or very poor connectivity. And even if there is connectivity available, whether the students have the due gadgetry available to access those online resources. So it is basically, I mean, enabling the students as well, so that they don't feel really deprived and dejected. So we therefore are using these two methods. People talk about blended learning. We talk about this hybrid mode of really learning environment where we are actually dealing with a segment of the population and the students who don't have access to the technological resources in terms of smartphones or laptops, etc., or they do not have connectivity. We actually provide them the printed material, learning material, send them through post, even conduct their tutoring activities nearest to their homes. Even now during this COVID situation, we actually are ensuring these activities are carried out and conducted at their nearest sites by observing all social distancing norms and SOPs which have been actually notified by the government, and where there is no such issue of connectivity and provision of the technological resources, we are using AAOU and LMS to actually carry out all these kind of academic activities, including the assessments. But I liked one of the sentences, I mean, Professor Gorky was mentioning about Professor Lee's talk. Not every learner is same. They have their own backgrounds. They have their own peculiar situations in which they live in, for example. And when we talk about online learning, it is flexible learning. It is learning at one's own ease, at one's own pace, for example. So why the same kind of assessment methods could really be applied to all kinds of learners if these all learners truly are not of the same background, are not the same. And secondly, from Professor Lee's talk, those who will be more innovative, those who will be more creative in terms of really designing their strategies for enabling online education would survive and would better address the quality concerns when it comes to online or open distance learning. And for that purpose, I'll quickly show you an R&D activity we are currently engaged in. That would be interesting for, I hope, I mean, would be interesting to many of my colleagues. We are trying to really map and model. I mean, this is something, an extension of whatever I talked about at the AAOU conference in 2019 in Lahore. It is basically being built on top of that concept which I presented there. And what we are trying to do is, let's have a framework. That framework would actually contain, I mean, as we normally do, it would start from the content and content development, where we would we'll use the natural language processing techniques to find out the concepts in the important concepts in a course, for example, and then we'll actually map using the mind map to establish the relations and correlations and dependencies between these concepts. On top of it, we'll then attach the learning outcomes and learning objectives, which are related to certain category of concepts. And then when this content will be actually implemented using any kind of means, whether it's face-to-face or it is an open distance learning mode, whatever the teacher will deliver, and he or she takes an assessment. That assessment again would be smartly designed and suggested and recommended by the system itself, that whatever concepts you have covered, it would really generate a suggestive quiz or a suggestive assignment or a suggestive end-term exam or a suggestive midterm exam based on the concepts which have so far been delivered by the tutor, by the teacher, which could be adapted anyway by the teacher concerned if required. And once the student takes that assessment, based on the scores the students get, the extent of learning will be measured. It would take back the learner and the teacher back to that mind map, where it would evaluate that if a student has performed good in category of concepts and which relate to certain learning outcomes, the extent of learning using certain mathematical formulas could be evaluated. And if a student or a learner performs bad or lesser in certain concept, he or she will be suggested, recommended to really take certain courses which are dependent on those concepts, due to which he or she could not perform better in that assessment. So it is an iterative process, an adaptive process, which would not only help the teachers to prepare the exam sheets or the assignments or the quizzes based on the learning objectives set for that course. And similarly, it would enable the students as well, based on actually measuring the extent of learning, suggest or recommend the student or the learner concerned to take certain courses again to improve his or her learning in which he or she has not performed better. So this is basically, a theoretic framework we so far have developed, and we intend to really now integrate this framework after testing with the LMS. So it would be all inclusive type of a learning management system, which would not only provide the typical LMS type of facilities for enabling the learning environment for the learners in an ODL mode, but at the same time would be providing a smart and intelligent framework for assessing the extent of learning of the learner and measure the quality assurance standards set by the institution concerned to evaluate how far the activities which had been set or defined by the institution concerned have been observed truly by the tutor, by the teacher concerned as well. So it was only, a brief about carrying out using the current artificial intelligence, natural language processing techniques, and some deep learning and machine learning techniques to really augment and enhance this learning environment for the learners in an ODL mode. I hope I have not exceeded to my 20-minute slot. If there are any questions or any comments, I'll be really happy to further talk about it. Thank you very much, Professor Gorky and other colleagues. I can't hear.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to on the microphone. Now, I'm interested in your last PowerPoint presentation about COVID-19 is a blessing. So I think almost all of us will agree that if we consider this as a blessing, so there will be a time for us to find moving forward by adopting appropriate technology condition according to our condition or situation. Before we have questions and answer, I would like to, to make one line between what was meant by Dr. K.C.Li, mentoring, tutoring, and if maybe you agree with me, e-assessment, quality e-assessment. So if we have a very good opportunity to design the mentoring and the tutoring system in one hand, and then we are going to find, let's say, how to make an assessment system so that they are in a good quality by considering the safety, validity, as you said, reliability, acceptability. So if we have that kind of framework, I think there will be no questions about quality assessment, whether it is because of the COVID or not because of the COVID.
Right. Very right.
And then you also introduce 4 things that I think are very good for us as well. LMS, AGI, you said. AGI, it can serve 30,000 to 40,000 students every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And e-tutor portal, and also online admission, and then you upgrade the IT infrastructures. I think this kind of effort would be answers to, let's say, anybody who doubts about the open and distant learning in warranting the quality. And then, in going back to what was said by Dr. K.C.Li, it seems that we have to put all our efforts, whether you are online distance education institution or not, to be more creative and sensitive, remembering that all the students is unique. So how can we develop, let's say, assessment portfolio, for example, one for all, one fit for all? I think almost all of us will agree that we have a very good insight and very inspiring how we are going to develop open and distant learning towards the quality assessment through a very good mentoring, tutoring design. So now we are going to have some questions. K.C.Li, thank you very much. I am inspired, totally inspired. And as Professor Zia UI-Qayyum said just now, not only in the conceptual base or conceptual framework, but also in the operational and even in the technicalities. I have an insight about that one, especially your very last frame diagram, how we go to dealing with all the technicalities things. Okay, Pak Rahmat and Ibu Wina, maybe we have some questions from our participants. We have to wait for 2 seconds. Hello, yes. Oh, this is to Dr. K.C.Li from Budianto, Jakarta, Indonesia. After the COVID-19 pandemic finishes, what are your personal expectations on the mentoring sustainability? What can be learned from the pandemic regarding the challenges? Please, K.C.Li, your comments.
Very quickly, 2 quick points. About mentoring sustainability. What we can do now, whenever the circumstances arise, we can sustain it. If we can do it now, probably we don't have great difficulty sustaining it in the future. The trouble is whether we need to sustain it. We sustain something for some good reasons. If we are forced to do it because of pandemic, it is something that we don't like it, then why bother to sustain it? If after we have tried it, we see that there are advantages in it, so there must be something advantageous, bringing us something good, something of value, then we could sustain it. Now, as for the next question about what we have learned from the pandemic, I believe that is one very important point that all of us should probably be alert, be vigilant. That is, be ready for change. Things could come very quickly, pushing us to move towards a new direction. The world is moving fast, and that could be various kinds of things, impact coming to us. If we are ready for change, ready to adjust ourselves, we'll stand in a much better position to sustain and to excel. So be ready for change.
Before we are going to the next questions, how you relate the mentoring and tutoring related to what was Professor Zia UI-Qayyum said just now about the integration of technology, because different countries, they have different problems. what would be your what would be your expectation or prediction so the sustainability will be there?
The use of AI for tailoring curriculum for individual students is, whether we like it or not, is the way to go. So the whole world is moving towards this direction. So the key point for us for open universities is how well we can adapt ourselves to this trend. I have been advocating that it is quite difficult for individual institutions to do all or do very much. But if we work together, for example, for AAOU to link us all together, each institution do a part of it, then together we will be very strong and we will be able to do very well.
Before we move to the next question, K.C.Li just now said about the artificial intelligence, and I know that Professor Zia UI-Qayyum have a very many research about this one. What would be your suggestion to keep maintaining the mentoring sustainability even with COVID or not? Please, Dr. Zia UI-Qayyum.
Gorky, I mean, I was going through your profile. I mean, you are a mathematician by initially, I mean, and then probably you shifted to this education domain. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So am I. I did my first master's in mathematics, and then I did my master's in computing and Ph.D. in computing and a Ph.D. in AI. I mean, I totally agree with Professor Li. Look, I mean, I'm making a comment. I mean, please don't, and I request everybody not to really take it, I mean, kind of personal comment. Yeah. Had online education been something lesser important or kind of second degree kind of education, why all universities today have adopted online education? So it was a myth. It was a misconception, I would say. The only thing which Professor Li rightly pointed out, I mean, it's pandemic or no pandemic.
Yes.
In 21st century, which is the age of technology, and when there are lots of social, economic, and other challenges faced by these this generation, I mean, the people who are between the age of 20 or 30, or the lifelong learners even. Technology has made them to learn at their own pace and at their own convenience. The only requirement which we as practitioners, we as teachers of this open distance learning mode have to benchmark certain things. Okay. And that benchmarking basically would set and remove all those apprehensions people used to have in their minds, whether it's students or other faculty members in the conventional universities, about the standards and quality of education. And these benchmarks are really to be decided, defined, and put in place, as Professor Li said, for actually maintaining a sustainable mentoring and tutoring environment through the use of technology.
Yes.
And similarly, having a very reliable and reliably defined and described and designed assessment method, which obviously is backbone of this whole learning environment. So these two components, as you're talking today about, if we could really have these benchmarks set, I mean, then this distinction is blurred whether you are enrolled to an open university or you're not enrolled to any other conventional university.
Wow. Yeah. Yes, beautiful, fantastic. I learned a lot. Maybe after this conversation, we may come up with one, let's say, suggestion to our own institution from the participants' point of view. Okay, we go to the next questions. Pak Rahmat and Ibu Wina, the next question.
Yeah, 3 seconds, Pak.
Okay, oh yeah, we have to wait 3 seconds, yes. Okay, this is from Charlie, Thailand. Oh, this is to Professor Zia UI-Qayyum. You mentioned the examiner, they apply online. How do you make sure they are standardized? Yes, please, Professor Zia UI-Qayyum.
As far as I could understand his question, I mean, I'll reply to this, and if my reply is not relevant, I'll ask the honorable colleague to really elaborate further on it. I mean, when I talk about applying online, I said we engage almost 90,000 tutors every year to deal with this huge population of 1.4 million students. And prior to my engagement at Allama Iqbal Open University, Allama Iqbal Open University used to do it manually. People would really send their intent and concepts to my regional campuses, and the regional directors then would find a suitable person. And this definition of suitability would mainly rely and rest with the person concerned who is hiring him or her as tutor or a resource person. We then came up with this portal where we now have a formula we decided that whosoever is teach at what level, for example, someone is to teach at level of MA education or MSc computer science or for MPhil computing, has to have this benchmark qualification and number of years of experience and certain other parameters. So we have actually set that parameters. We have given those parameters to the system, designed a form correspondingly. People log in and they give their credentials in a controlled manner to the system. System then do a first round of scrutiny based on the data provided by the tutors and examiners. And then whosoever actually goes through this first round of scrutiny is emailed back to upload their academic transcripts and credentials so that those could be really then verified, whatever they have provided, whether it matches with their actual credentials. And this basically is done at the moment semi-automatically, partially automatically, and partially manually. The domain experts then review those credentials, match them with the data provided by to the system, and then an authentication is actually set at the system that this person is authorized to teach a course or certain number of courses at certain specific level. And then based on the geographic long and lat coordinates, he or she is then assigned as a tutor or to work as a tutor or a resource person or an examiner based on his or her long lat coordinates. And the students' coordinates are also taken from the address, and a matchmaking is done within a 2 kilometers radius or a 3 kilometer radius. A tutor is assigned to the students who live in that vicinity. But when it comes to lecturing, since it's all online through Agahi, now we conduct it in virtual classroom modes. I said one virtual classroom contains almost 70 to 80 students, and that student could be either from east part of the country and the other could be from west part of the country. And my teacher from Allama Iqbal Open University's main campus is delivering the lecture. So that's why actually we have maintained that environment. For assessments, it doesn't matter, where do you reside? It's all online basically, once we have validated all these tutors and examiners.
I'm inspired to ask you further about how they are standardized. In your presentation just now, you have several kinds of assessment. Let's say end-term assessment, online final exams, which means that end-term assessment, open books, for example, and portfolio, and also assignments. How you how you make sure that they are standardized? That's another question.
Well, in terms of preparing the end-term assessment or the portfolio assignments or the assignments, we have our own faculty members who is assigned the responsibility of working as coordinator for that course.
Yes.
He or she, along with a group of other domain experts or the teachers, prepares that assignment or the portfolio assignment or the end-term assessment based on an open book. And then this basically is sent towards the students either through Agahi LMS or in the printed form where there is no connectivity available. And then these are evaluated either online. This LMS has got a plagiarism, anti-plagiarism tool already embedded. So when the student submits the assignments, it is actually scanned through Turnitin, and then one report is generated whether it is plagiarized or not plagiarized. And for the manual kind of assessments, the teachers actually in both of the cases then mark those assessments assignments or the end-term assessments. And then we have got another layer on top of it.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, we have got this, okay, 10% of the top scorers and 10% from the poorest of performers are to be really reevaluated, whether there is no, I mean, as if there is no bias really in terms of awarding the highest marks or awarding the lowest marks on both of the tails of this normal curve, for example. So that's their second curve. And then this grade is actually fed to the system for calculating their grades and then correspondingly the semester, CGPAs.
Yes, thank you. K.C., in one hand, we have to be very aware of uniqueness of each student, for example. On the other hand, institutionally, to make it more easier, for example, we tend to formatting them. What is your comment on this? Because something like a paradoxical. In one hand, we must pay attention to the uniqueness of every student, but on the other hand, from organizational perspective, we must. We
talk about standardized assessment.
Yes, yeah. What's your comment about that?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I believe that educators, instructors must be highly alert about what we really wish to achieve through our assessment. Now, I would like to extend what we have been talking about a little bit. Assessment, it seems that we have been talking a lot about assessment of learning. That is what students have learned, when the students have reached a certain standard, and that is why we have emphasized so much about standardization. That a standard is important. We, as university qualification, we must make sure that student has reached a certain standard. Now that's basic.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's assessment of learning. But we also should talk about assessment for learning.
Okay.
That is, now, then we widen our horizon. Now, with information from an assessment, we could feedback to the instructor, to the curriculum. So the curriculum could be tailored to individual students' need. And as we talk about the teaching part and learning part, for university degree, university education, we shouldn't just be talking about students reaching a certain standard. That's students must achieve just a certain standard, that is something prescribed.
Yes.
Students could achieve much more than what we have prescribed. We shouldn't limit them. So to what extent we could help our students to learn the most, maximize their learning through the learning period. It's very much our instructor, our educators' responsibility. We could just set a certain standard and ask the student to stick to that standard. But at the same time, if we extend our horizon, we could talk about helping our learners to maximize their learning. Of course, they must reach a certain standard. That's basic. But they could do a lot more. So individual students, then I can answer your questions. Individual students, of course, they come from very different background, very different level of competence to a course. But some of them will reach the required standard. Of course, it's also our responsibility to help everyone to reach the required standard. But at the same time, it's also important to make sure that everyone going through the course have maximized their learning so that they could learn much more than what has been prescribed through the process. If the assessment could feedback to the learners, this could facilitate a lot.
Okay, thank you. It opens our horizon now because we have to have a very good answer that quality is there, even it is online learning or even it is not blended, for example, or even this face-to-face interaction. Okay, the next question, please. This is from Cynthia, Makassar, Indonesia. Do you think COVID-19 disaster do you think COVID-19 disaster or blessing for distance education? K.C. Just now, Professor Zia UI-Qayyum have already explanation about this one.
I believe that many of us, most of us can answer this question. The answer is obvious. We can't say that it's not a disaster. It has cost us the world many lives. So we feel sad for them, for the losses. It has brought about a lot of disruption to our daily educational practices. It's caused a lot of problem, including the financial statuses of many institutions. So it somehow to many of us is a disaster. We can't say no to it. But we shouldn't just look at the dark side. At the same time, we could look at the bright side.
Yes.
It is pushing us towards something positive, something that could help us in the future. So if we also look at it from a positive side, this not only helps us looking at it, working on it in a more energetic way, looking at the things in a positive way. We also prepare ourselves for a better future.
Yes.
So it's both.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Before put to the next questions, Professor Zia UI-Qayyum, you are a scientist, if I may say, heavily on technology, for example. What is your comments if we see online learning related to the COVID-19 from psychological aspect of students? Because there's one question from Universitas Terbuka. From psychological aspect, intervened by the technology because of the COVID-19.
Very important, Professor Gorky. I think probably, this distance education or open distance learning mode has its own inherent psychological challenges when it comes to the learner. Anyway, it's not exception which has been created due to any COVID or no COVID. But probably the gravity of the situation is now more being realized by the community around, because more and more students are now connected to the learning material and learning resources and registering their courses online. So more voice is being raised, I should say. I have been trying to find an answer to the question, and I think if Professor Li could really further enlighten us. Look, one big difference between the conventional universities and those who are registered to an online course, for example, is the experience you actually gain or get while being on campus, where you interact with a diverse community of the learners, which actually then has its own good impacts onto your own personality. You happen to really learn from the campus life as well. You have your own social life as well. And now you are constrained to really sit before a gadget, before a computer, whether COVID or no COVID. You don't know, you do not really have that social life and interaction with the students when you are connected online. You may have an online community, but you don't have really that sense of social interactions. So, which basically in turn has created lots of psychological challenges faced by the learners. There has now been studies going on in my country even. The universities are being suggested to establish the career counseling. They used to have career counseling centers, but now they're being advised to have a psychologist as well there, who can then provide these counseling facilities to the students. And again, surprisingly, these sessions are being conducted online because they cannot really visit the campus.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, this is some solution being given to the learners, but that's an inherent challenge of the open distance learning anyway.
Okay, thank you. And then the next questions, I think we still have one more. Yep, this is from Daniel L, Philippines. This is to Professor Zia UI-Qayyum. As you have more than 1.3 million, now 1.4 million students, what is the most challenging situation, particularly during the COVID-19 outbreak, they face, particularly in terms of connectivity? Please.
Well, in my case, since my university primarily was operating in a distance learning mode, primarily is an open university. So whosoever is registered with me, I know their limitations, I know their whereabouts, I know what are their challenges anyway. So I got the data, I mean, during COVID, the major challenge, I think, I mean, we have even able to facilitate more to the students. The students used to come to these study centers, as I mentioned, to attend their tutorials. The females would travel to, say, adjacent cities or adjacent towns. They'll have to stay in some hostel or any place where they'll have to even pay for really staying for 10 days or 15 days to attend those tutorials or workshop sessions. But now they don't need to. They are sitting in their own homes, I mean, having only a laptop and a connectivity, or on their mobiles. They're attending their tutorials, they're attending their workshops while being at home. So it has actually created more safe and cost-effective solution for those students. But more has been realized in terms of digital divide anyway. And Allama Iqbal Open University obviously is not an exception. We luckily, since my university has got that standing in the country as well, we have been able to really pursue this case to the level of Prime Minister of Pakistan through my Minister of Education, where now these telecom operators are being instructed to take the connectivity to these remote areas of Pakistan. The Prime Minister of Pakistan has formed across the ministers, 4 ministries are actually part of that committee, where they are now planning a policy framework to further strengthen the distance learning or open distance learning in Pakistan, so that the students can be facilitated, people at large can be facilitated, and for that purpose, actually, the policies are being really framed.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Again.
Yeah, K.C., in terms of connectivity, what is your experience in Hong Kong, for example? Do you have another problems with the connectivity, or another side of connectivity related to the online learning in Hong Kong situation?
Now, Hong Kong has very good connectivity in terms of the internet.
Yes.
Hong Kong is a very small city, a very, very small city, very small area, but with 7 million people.
Yeah.
So people are very close to each other, in fact. Now, distance education, we still have a market. It is still important to a large extent to the city, because people have difficulty attending face-to-face classes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, for us, though the distance learning market is shrinking, it's getting smaller and smaller, but we still see that a lot of people find that if they cannot attend classes online, they go to our distance learning course, and it is still good. But we also experience somehow that as Hong Kong is very small, it's easy to get to attend classes. So for people who wish to attend classes, they can by all means do so. And if students prefer it, we have to offer it. So for distance learning courses, we still offer face-to-face supplement. But as we also see that as a result of the COVID-19, people are pushed to go online. And it appears that more and more people are getting accustomed to doing things online. Somehow it appears to me that in the older generation, they thought that it was crazy to meet a new boyfriend, girlfriend online and then get married. Some decades ago, it is a crazy idea, but we see that in the last 2 decades, it's quite common. So what will happen in the future, we can just look forward to seeing the changes.
Yes, as long as we can see it from a positive view, I think we always have a way out to dealing with whether it's COVID or another disaster, for example. Okay, I think we have 2 more questions before we give it to Pak Rahmat again to have a closing session. The next, Audi from STKIP Kusuma Negara Indonesia. This is to you, K.C. In the current pandemic scenario, humanizing online learning and the responsibility to meet learning goals appear daunting for us as a teacher. How's the plan going to do both? So what's the focus here?
I see the challenge and the workload implication mainly. Learners are expecting more and more from us. They are from the institution, from the instructors, from professors. So other than being able to deliver courses in the classroom, they expect to do it effectively online. And in terms of online, they're expecting more and more component in it, rather than doing giving out learning material on a text-based in terms of text. They are expecting more multimedia kind of learning materials, and also different learners are expecting tailored material from individual courses. So they are expecting more and more from us, and this somehow means workload to individual teachers. This is something that we can't escape. We have to face it, handle it. So technology is helping us to modify what we are doing, and we have been saying that distance education works on economy of scale. So if we have a good number of students, we could work on it economically. But as students, we look at students as individuals. Then the situation could be quite different. But at the same time, we see that technology is in fact helping us to treat students individually. Through the computer, we could interact with individual students in different ways. We could tailor the teaching and learning process in slightly different way for different learners because of their different ways of progress in the learning process. And the same applies to assessment. And we have already got some very good information, some good development and latest technology that is available to us. So we could look at it in a positive way, but we probably need to be well prepared to learn things new. Whether we are a computing expert, we somehow need to get more in touch with AI, with the use of data, and it is probably the way to go for all professionals in the distance education field. So we need to get ourselves ready for that.
Okay, the next questions. This is from Sofia, Malaysia, to Professor Zia UI-Qayyum. Your presentation is interesting. As you said, the students are different. How do you cope with such different kind of students? What strategy do you do with that issue, especially regarding different competencies? Maybe you may elaborate the first explanation just now. Please, Professor Zia.
Thank you very much. Quite relevant again. I mean, frankly, I mean, if I could really make a one-liner comment on the previous question, I mean, when we talk about, I mean, meeting the learning goals and learning objectives, issue basically has become manifold or has more been highlighted due to the fact that now almost all of the institutions, whether they were prepared or not, whether their faculty was trained or not, whether the student was actually psychologically, mentally prepared to really register themselves or expose themselves to the online learning, have now been really put in that I mean, scenario where the teachers are to take classes online wherever they were not trained to do it. Students were not really mentally actually accepting this fact that on one fine morning, while attending the face-to-face classes, they now will be having these online classes. So this basically situation has aggravated this whole challenge of coping up the stress, psychological issues, training issues, and how to meet the learning goals and learning outcomes, etc. The universities where the faculty members were already trained, and they are facing lesser challenges as compared to the other universities. That was only a complementary or a supplementary really comment, in response to the question. And coming to the current question.
Yeah.
That was basically, one of my PhD students completed his thesis on this concept. And we are now actually extending this this theory. At the moment, honestly, when we talk about standardized assessments, we prepare a question paper, for example, whether it's face-to-face or online mode. And we actually then hand it over to the students of all backgrounds without considering their background, their personal learning traits, maybe, etc., etc. And that was the point which Professor Lee said. Since every learner has his or her own type of learning and their own backgrounds, learning habits, learning patterns, learning traits, they should be evaluated separately. And this cannot be done if we are doing it manually. And that's why, the framework I have proposed, basically it is an adaptive kind of framework, which basically would consider the learning objectives set by the teacher concerned for the learners. The learning objects would be really then recommended to the learner. He or she would take those classes or sessions, would do an assessment based on the assessment which would be done automatically by the system, and based on the scores attained, learner would be then recommended to certain additional supplementary materials or the learning material provided by the teacher, so that one could improve one's own learning. So, and correspondingly, even the assessments are actually recommended and created semi-automatically by the system based on the learner's background knowledge and the learner's ability to learn, which is modeled continuously using AI techniques in an adaptive fashion. So this basically is need of the day. As I said, we need to benchmark certain things, how to provide best mentoring, how to provide best tutoring to the students in an online mode, and more importantly, how to do this online assessment, which is more adaptive and more learner-specific, learner-centric. And this is something, honestly, it's an R&D activity we are currently working on, which could take some time anyway.
Yeah, I think, let's say a year from now on, we'll be hearing from you how the R&D results. So it will inspire us
I'm trying
to have
to find
a more quality assessment.
To do on my behalf. Let's see.
Yes, okay. We are almost approaching the final session here for 5 minutes. Now, I would like to invite Professor Zia UI-Qayyum and K.C.Li later on, but this is the the motivation, if you like. Whether you like it or not, the COVID-19 is there. Whether it is a blessing or disaster, the COVID-19 is there. Now, how would you suggest to us, not only for the students, but also for the institutions, to have more agility or grit or adversity, so that, as I said just now, whether it is a COVID, a blessing or disaster, the learning is always there, regardless of online or offline. Professor Zia, please, for the closing statement.
Professor Gorky, I spent all of my career as student and as teacher in a formal, in a conventional university, you can say. This is my first experience of working in an open distance learning university. And frankly, I had also these apprehensions about quality of education between these two modes, frankly, because I had never been exposed to such world. And this phenomena, though, you find these MOOCs prevalent since 2003, 2004, in one form or other, but the practice, it was not really much practice in the environment anyway. But now I see from two different dimensions. As head of the institution, which is basically dealing with this huge population, providing bridging the education divide, I should say, and from a technological background as well. I mean, how can really I actually wipe out these apprehensions? And when I look at this, as I said earlier, education, you cannot really differentiate whether you're providing learning environment or education in a distance learning mode or a conventional learning environment. It is important as the learners are being exposed to really learn and attain their academic goals.
Yes.
Irrespective of this environment. Important factor is, even if it's face-to-face mode, if we are not really practicing the quality standards prevalent in the domain, if the teachers are not qualified, if the content is not updated, if the assessments are poor, I mean, this face-to-face education would be absurd an idea. So is about online education as well. So let's not differentiate online and offline.
Yes.
And COVID or post-COVID, it is a learning environment. The universities have to have a sustainable learning environment, which is based on sound academic standards, irrespective of the fact that it's a face-to-face or an online mode.
Yes, very motivating.
And if we're doing a stopgap kind of arrangements, as some of the universities are doing, it would be a chaotic situation after post-pandemic.
Yes, yeah.
Let's not do it.
Yeah.
Either we are in it or let's forget about it.
So our innovation and creativity should be there. Okay, K.C., your closing statements for our session. Very interesting.
Since April, this is the 4th keynote speech I have given on this area, teaching during the COVID-19 period. This is indeed a very important area. It is something that everyone in the education sector has been upset and has to deal with. It is practical. But what we have just said has made several points very clear. The distinction between distance education and conventional education is getting blurred. And the distinction is getting less and less distinct. We probably need to be prepared for this. And as more and more people get involved in online learning, we see that two things will come up. Reliance on technology, and those who can do well in technology can do better. And online learning somehow means that people can select whatever that is better in the world. So it is a challenge for everyone. So we must work together to make sure that we all can do well. The next is how well we can master it. Now, more and more, as we talk about online learning, more and more we are also talking about transparency as we pursue quality. Now, for distance education, we have been talking a lot, emphasizing QA, quality assurance. That is, the quality should be good, and in terms of, in the eyes of not only ourselves but to other people, to certain standard as well. But when we talk about education in the future, people are talking more and more about how to make it transparent, how to make the quality, how the advantages of individual institutions, courses, degree programs, how their quality, making the advantages, their characteristics transparent. So we are facing somehow greater challenges in the future. So we got to make ourselves be well prepared. So I still believe that together, as we work together, we can be strong. Yes. So AAOU is an excellent platform for us to work together.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, participants all over the world, there are 1,500 participants within this synchronous webinar. So I don't have any conclusion, but I learned something from this discussion from a fantastic resource person, and I thank you very much because you enlightened us for to deal with a future with a very positive attitude. Now, for you, those who wants to have open and distance learning services, be ready psychologically, be ready intellectually, and be ready physically. And for all of us ODL practitioners or institutions, give our best. Together we can. Thank you very much. Pak Rahmat, go to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, K.C. Thanks,
Okay.
Professor
Thank
Zia
you
UI-Qayyum.
very much. A very interesting presentation. Once again, I would like to thank you to Professor Zia UI-Qayyum and then also Dr. K.C.Li, Dr. Gorky, Professor Gorky Sembiring for leading this presentation. Also, I thank you very much to Professor Ojat Darojat, the President of the AAOU. And once again, on behalf of the committee, I thank you very much for responding to our invitation. And we do hope that one day we can meet face to face in the real world without COVID-19. Okay, I would like to read some information. First, about the AAOU journal. I would like to invite all participants who are listening and watching our program today to send the paper, the article, to the AAOU journal. If you can not read clearly the leaflet on the screen, please send your request to the AAOU email. You can check our website. Once again, if your paper is accepted and published in the AAOU journal, one of the benefits you will receive is that you will have a free registration in the next AAOU conference in OUSL, Sri Lanka. Thank you. Yes, you can read. Yeah, please enjoy the video of the next AAOU conference, and then we see you in sorry for the trouble. We will try again.
On all four directions are works in stone and roundels of gold, broad the quadrangles and mansions of mighty mould, tall the gabled houses and balconies. Where else? Not on earth, but in heavens are those of such elegance and girth. Sri Lanka, a nation steeped in history. A nation with incredible cultural diversity. A nation of heavenly heights and purity. A nation of legendary beaches. A nation whose capital, Colombo, resonates with tradition and modernity. Occupying a pride of place in this unique nation and the city is the Open University of Sri Lanka, OUSL, Sri Lanka's premier ODL institution. And we are ready to welcome AAOU to Sri Lanka in 2020. Our venue is the Cinnamon Grand Hotel, which offers exquisite conference facilities, plus a blend of the global cultures. Our theme for AAOU 2020 is Opening Minds for a Sustainable Future, reorienting ODL to surmount challenges. With this theme, we intend to create intellectual spaces and opportunities for reflecting on the UNESCO concern of education as a means of sustainable development.
As a founding member of the AAOU, the Open University of Sri Lanka celebrates its 40th anniversary in 2020. We offer AAOU our inimitable and peerless experiences to open minds and cultivate the notions of sustainable education.
OUSL and AAOU. Let us expand the horizons of ODL.
Thank you. And due to the COVID-19, the AAOU conference held by the OUSL will be held between the 1st and the 3rd June 2021. Once again, then the next AAOU conference will be held by the OUSL University Open University of Sri Lanka, will be held between the 1st and the 3rd June 2021. Please check our website for further information. For you who wants to have a free registration, please submit your paper first to the AAOU journal, and then you will have a free registration fee. And then before we end this session, I would like all participants to complete the feedback form so that you will receive the certificate. So filling out this form is one of the conditions to get your certificates. Before we close, I would like to inform you that due to the demand and request from the people around the world, the bi-monthly web conference is changed, and then will be held every month from next month. So we still have 2 more sessions. The third session will be held on the 3rd of September 2020. We will be talking about policy and direction and also briefing micro credential and MOOCs. And the last, or the fourth or the last AOU President speech will be held on the 6th October 2020. We'll be talking about the quality assurance and accreditation. We will inform the speakers for each session in the next e-bulletin and email to all of you and also in the AOU website. Once again, I thank you very much to Professor Dr. Zia UI-Qayyum, Dr. K.C.Li, Professor Gorky Sembiring, and then also to the President of OU, Professor Ojat Darojat. Once again, thank you. See you again in the next meeting, in the presidential meeting, and keep safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ojat.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And once again, thank you also to Dr. Majid. Thank you, Dr. Majid.
Zahid Majid, thank you very much, brother.
Thank you.
See you.
Zahid, Professor Ojat, Zahid is saying that coffee is due on Professor Ojat anyway.
K.C., best regard to all our colleagues in OU SK.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Also in Allama Iqbal Open University. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye. Good day.
Bye, Professor Zia. Good day.
Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, you are kindly requested to complete the feedback form. Filling out the feedback form is one of the conditions to get your certificate. Once again, if you would like to have your certificate, please complete the feedback form with the link you can see on the screen. Okay, so if you would like to have your certificate, you have to register first and then complete the feedback form. See you again at the next webinar on the 3rd of September.
Universitas Terbuka, tradition and innovation go hand in hand. As the first distance education institution in Indonesia, Universitas Terbuka was established to provide access to higher education for all Indonesians living across the country. Financial and geographical issues, as well as infrastructure challenges, were among the background to establish a massive open education system. Development of higher quality and more efficient infrastructure has significantly driven Universitas Terbuka to move forward. The development of user-friendly technology and the spread of mobile technology in rural areas have made a dramatic impact on the features of services and the characteristics of students. Having been promoted as the Cyber University of Indonesia, Universitas Terbuka has entered the new era of Industrial Revolution 4.0 by increasing the quality of learning services, infrastructure, and human resources. In doing so, Universitas Terbuka fosters and maintains effective strategic partnerships with domestic and foreign institutions. As a pioneer of distance learning in Indonesia, Universitas Terbuka was appointed to lead the establishment of the Indonesia Institute of Cyber Education, or ICE Institute. This institution is a regulatory agency to set standards in the distance learning. Recent improvements were carried out to provide meaningful learning services and opportunities, which include year-round registration system, pre-seasonal programs, learning clinic, modern curriculum design, enriched learning materials, interactive digital learning materials, guided e-learning that includes online tutorials, web-based tutorials, e-lecturing and e-seminar, online examination and online proctoring, employability skills training, and improve quality assurance system. The main goal of the initiative is to improve student academic performance. Universitas Terbuka believes that constant regulatory and technological changes have created an increased focus on effective governance and quality. External reviewers and auditors, including the International Council for Open and Distance Education, ICDE, are frequently invited to provide an independent and high level of rigorous scrutiny to all aspects. In addition, through continuous research and innovation, on its way to advocate for the global open education movement, Universitas Terbuka will become a globally respected open distance learning institution.
Memasuki era
Universitas Terbuka, tradition and innovation go hand in hand. As the first distance education institution in Indonesia, Universitas Terbuka was established to provide access to higher education for all Indonesians living across the country. Financial and geographical issues, as well as infrastructure challenges, were among the background to establish a massive open education system. Development of higher quality and more efficient infrastructure has significantly driven Universitas Terbuka to move forward. The